All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Purpose Driven Podcast, episode 3. Today, we're going to go into the importance of willpower and achieving goals and making positive changes. So, I had the definition of willpower pulled up, provided by Google. And the definition of willpower, like the dictionary definition, is the ability to control yourself, strong determination that allows you to do something difficult. So we're gonna have a segment of actually understanding willpower and just defining what willpower is in both of our unique ways. And we'll talk about that and we'll move forward within it. So for you, what would be your definition of willpower? Just ignoring the actual dictionary definition.
I think, in my opinion, the definition of willpower is your ability to resist certain desires and urges.
Hmm.
So that could be, for example, you have an exam coming up the next day, but then your friends tell you to party that night. Are you going to party that night or are you going to study for your exam? Right? That
Yeah.
takes willpower, right? And another example is you have to, you know, you have a family dinner the next day, but then your friends are telling you, oh, let's take a 2-day trip to New York.
Hmm.
What are you going to do? That is a question you have to ask yourself, and I think that's where willpower comes in. It's the ability to resist desires and urges and think more long term than short term.
Exactly. Exactly. I also view willpower as this thing like when you want to go do something for greater change, there's something I like to call the impulse. Essentially, what the impulse is like that resistance to actually do the thing because you're uncomfortable whilst doing it. I think part of building willpower is also learning how to get rid of that impulse in order for you to work towards something more grateful than yourself, or more beyond your comprehension towards greatness. And I think that's a huge step of mastering willpower, and it definitely does take it takes a lot of character development, discipline, morals, values to actually guide yourself into building willpower.
100%.
Right. Cool. So, what do you think, in your opinion, in terms of willpower, how do you think you develop it? Like, what steps do you think the average person has to take in order to build up the skill of actually resisting urges and all that?
In my personal experience, what helped me the most is having a sense of reasoning behind why you're doing it. So first of all, having a sense of reasoning. Okay, so I have this habit that I'm trying to quit, and for this habit, I need a certain amount of willpower. How do I obtain that willpower? I need to find why I need to do this in the first place. Why do I need to quit this habit? Why do I need to? What greater goal am I trying to achieve?
Hmm.
Right, and if you look beyond that, your mind will start to come up with ways for you to resist that willpower. For me personally, in my personal experience, what has helped me is literally thinking about the long-term effects and the long-term, harm it's going to cause, right? And I think that's one of the major reasons. If you, let's say, for example, you're doing something that you're peer pressured to do, but you're not exactly, it's not something that you want to do, right? You have to look at, okay, why am I doing this? Okay, because of peer pressure. Okay, what are the long-term benefits of this? Pretty much none. It's going to cause you long-term harm than long-term benefit, if anything, right? And you got to
Hmm.
look at it and be like, does this serve my purpose? Absolutely not. And
Hmm.
once you decide that, the way to resist that urge is to always think about your purpose and your long-term goal every time you get that desire. Every time you get the desire to go with your friends and engage in degenerate activities, think about your purpose, think about your long-term goal, think like, okay, does this action align to my long-term goal? If it doesn't, then it's not part of my action. It's not part of anything that I do. Every single action in your life should align to a certain purpose in your life. And that is why in episode 1, we discussed purpose. And purpose is so important for that reason. It helps you to willpower, it helps you have a direction in your life, and helps you get rid of the negative habits in your life.
It also, if you're unable to luster that willpower for what you want, for whatever reason, then you have to reconsider what you're resisting. Because if you're resisting something for a goal, you might not have the full faith within that goal if you're not able to resist. So I think part of building willpower is understanding why you're not doing something, but as well as being so confident and being so stern that you want to achieve that that habit that you're trying to break isn't even part of the question anymore. It doesn't exist in your mind, it doesn't serve you. We talked about this a little today earlier. If it doesn't serve you, let it go. And that's a huge thing. Like if you don't believe in what you're working towards, then you're never going to get there. So reconsider what you're working towards and genuinely understand because every goal that you have is socially influenced to an extent. So always make sure that if you're resisting something or you're trying to overcome something or you're trying to defeat a habit, question why. Make a list of why. Like every time you want to go do the degenerate stuff, every time you want to go do stuff that's not good for you, stare at that list and genuinely ask yourself, why am I doing it? And if you look at that list and you're like, oh, I'm doing it because, I want to be a better partner. I want to be better at business. I want to have my life on track. Those are strong reasons not to fall in to doing degeneracy because as me and you are both aware, the way society is set up, it's quick fixes and cheap dopamine. And willpower goes against every single societal norm that we're currently having at the moment.
And I think like if you another way for you to really kind of assert that willpower is literally just stare at it. I mean, this might sound like crazy, but like this is what helped me get over my addiction, right? So
Mhm.
I used to engage in gym activities all the time. What I used to do is put that substance in front of me and I used to stare at it. Like I literally stared at it, like I hated it, right? So I was like, okay, I put it in front of me, and this is a willpower exercise you guys can do if you guys are struggling with any of it. Put it in front of you, look at it, stare at it, and keep battling your mind. Your mind's gonna keep telling you to go towards that thing, but then you just look at it, be like, no, it doesn't serve my purpose. It's not aligned to my long term goal. It doesn't serve my purpose. It's not aligned to my long term goal. You're basically brainwashing yourself in a positive way to the point where you're rewiring your brain. This is the concept of brain plasticity. You're rewiring your brain so that you're not dependent on that specific substance anymore. And I
It
think that's
also,
the
yeah,
full power exercises you can do.
it also it's good to challenge your brain because we have a lot of stimulation in this world. We're always being consistently stimulated through smartphones, media, video games, music, and it's crucial to have those. It's like exercising your brain essentially, having those moments of you mentally battling yourself. Because do you think generally the person who feeds into addiction, they don't take the time to question what they're doing. They just kind of act on the impulse, which leads them down this path of addiction. And if you want to break anything in life, like if you want to break addiction or you want to captivate attention, the best way to do that is something called a pattern interrupt. A pattern interrupt is what you just described, staring at the substance, staring at whatever it is that's causing you long-term harm or even short-term harm and questioning what this is. I've done what you said actually with certain things, and I stare at it and I come to the conclusion that it's bullshit. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't work. It's just it does I don't care about it. You get it out of the way and then yeah, you always have to challenge your mind. Like your mind's a muscle. Like you can work out at the gym and stuff all you want, but you also got to train your brain and that's one of the most beneficial ways to do it because it puts you in a point of critical thinking which the world lacks at the moment. So that's a really good exercise. And I was going to get into, building, willpower muscle, but you nailed it on the head with that. I mean, that's like the best technique to sit there and think about what you're about to do. Besides that, do you have anything else that might be unorthodox to, create that willpower and that discipline? What would you say besides that? Is there anything that you could possibly add on top of that to just become a better person in terms of willpower?
Putting yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the best ways to build willpower. And getting out of your comfort zone is one of the most important things man can do. Comfort kills ambition. Comfort kills goal driven people, ambitious people. It is the biggest toxin in the world, and uh, it's something that is not well known. We all know that taking drugs is bad for you. We all know that um, engaging in degenerate activities is bad for you, but comfort is even worse than those because it's something that everyone relies on, and
Hmm.
it can backfire if you don't have control over it. So putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, for example, you have you have to wake up in the morning to study for a test. Yeah, you don't want to wake up in the morning, but then are you going to do what it takes to get a good grade on that test, right? What is your long-term vision? That's why aligning every single action to your long-term vision forces you to be in uncomfortable situations because you're going to have to do things that no one else wants to do, right? In order for you to
Hmm.
be uh, in order for you to be part of that, top 1%, 2%, 10% of people, you have to do things that are very uncomfortable for you and do things that are not average. So
Hmm.
for that to happen, you need to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and it builds willpower because you're forcing yourself to make yourself comfortable in that situation when in reality you're not. And doing that actually increases a brain area in your brain. It's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. So
Hmm.
basically, that's the area of willpower. So the best way to increase that area is uncomfortable situations. If you need to work out in the morning, work out in the morning. If you have set yourself a habit tracker or a schedule, stick with that schedule no matter how hard it is. Because making the schedule is the easy part, but sticking to it is the tougher part, to be honest. You get to like day 10, you're sticking with your schedule, fine, everything's good. But then the moment you get to day 20, there's a day where you stay up late or you go out with your friends. You don't want to wake up in the morning. So, what is the choice you're going to make then? That will decide how much willpower you're going to gain.
Yeah, and I also find for most people the hardest part is not even the task, it's starting the task. The willingness to actually defeat the impulse and start. So I have a quick story. I was hanging out with my friends about a few months ago, and we decided to go on like a 10 mile run or like a 5 mile, 5 10 mile run. And bro, I didn't want to run, bro. I didn't want to fucking run. I didn't want to do none of this shit. But I knew in the back of my mind, and this is kind of how I defeat the impulse, that I asked myself, what do I have to lose? And then what do I have to gain? Essentially like creating a mental pro and con sheet within my head. And I'm like, pro, I'll exercise today for the second time, which is, I mean, great. I'll, you know, have a brotherhood, like three men running 10 miles in the street at like 11 at night, 11 p.m. What's a better feeling than that? What's the alternative? We just sit around and bullshit all night, or we go out and we try to do something hard to improve the function of the brain, which I believe in doing hard things is crucial for your brain development because it allows you to think more critically after you're done doing it. Because no one ever regretted doing something hard. They might be like, "Oh, I went for a 10 mile run and that was hard." Um, or I did my exam for college to become a doctor. That was hard. But they never said, "Oh, I wish I never did it." So it's also very important to view yourself from the third person perspective when you're trying to increase your willpower to just analyze while you're doing it. Uh, because like you said, the top 1 to 10%, um, the reason why it's such a low percentage is not because it's hard to obtain, it's because it's well, certain aspects, the reason why it's such a low percentage is because people don't think. Everybody has the
Exactly. And
ability to go ahead.
yeah. So what I wanted to touch on was like speaking of like doing the hard things, right? So there's a concept, it's called like limbic friction, right? So it's a term where you basically are doing the task, like you don't want to do the task, right? It's like, for example, okay, like you're studying for like this class or this gen ed class that you don't want to do. Like for example, it's some like English class or whatever that you don't even give a shit about, but you have to do it for your degree, right?
Hmm.
you are gonna feel that feeling. It's like, oh, I don't really want to do this task. I don't really feel like doing it. That feeling of not wanting to do the task is called limbic friction, right? Just a fancy scientific term for basically not feeling like doing the work, right? So what you can do is that's another way of increasing your willpower is you overcome that limbic friction by using your body to change the state of your mind. For example, like you have an assignment coming up and you don't feel like doing it, maybe hit 10 to 20 push-ups. That will kind of change the state of your mind. It'll help you overcome that limbic friction. It's kind of like a graph, right? You're at the top of the graph. This is like the limbic friction. You want to get to here. You're here, right? You want to come over here. This is limbic friction. Okay, this is where you want to do the task, but you don't feel like doing it. This is where you will do the task. You have to get from here to here. That gap right there can be easily covered if you use your body to change your mind. For example, go for a walk, do 20 push-ups, do some pull-ups, go talk to some family members, right? Have a task where you can change the state of your mind so you're more likely to do the task. And that's another way of increasing willpower as well.
Where do you feel like in your life that what part of your life was your willpower tested the most?
During my college days, for sure. Um, I, especially when I got on to self-improvement, like I think once I got on to self-improvement and once I got rid of most of my friends and started, improving my life for the better, I still had the urges. I still had the desire to, go out and engage in degenerate activities because it's such an appealing lifestyle, right? Like
Hmm.
it's so appealing that you kind of get drawn to it in the darkest moments. Like you have times in a self-improvement journey where you're just down, like you just don't feel the same. You're like, I'm alone in this journey, and you just have it's just one of those days where you just don't feel right. You don't feel motivated, and you do your work regardless, but you don't feel right emotionally. And in those times, that's where my willpower was tested a lot because I had to force myself to feel good that this is part of the journey. That isn't, even though that lifestyle is appealing, it's not meant for your purpose. It's not meant for who you are. You're destined for greatness, and you're destined to be better than being surrounded by degenerates. And that's what I tell myself every time. Self-talk is so important. You need to have positive self-talk 24/7. There should be no negative self-talk at all because the moment you have negative self-talk, you're basically conditioning yourself to go back to the times that you're trying to avoid.
Hmm.
Positive self-talk is like your own therapy. Like you
Yeah.
don't need any therapist if you think about self-talk. Self-talk is so important, right? It's
Yeah.
important for every aspect of your life.
It's like how I was saying earlier, you're the center of your own reality. And that's like the realest thing ever. You're in control of everything. That's why I try to tell people like, uh, a lot of the self-help people make the world out to be this cold, stern place, but that's their perception of their own reality. So for them, that's true. But if you have positive self-talk, like there's two men. One of them is dealing with like a lonely situation, and there's another one who's dealing with the same situation. The one we ever heard like the black pill, like the people who think like if your eyebrow is 1 centimeter up, you get more hose. Um, yeah.
Uh,
So, yeah. Um, essentially it's your perception of the world. Like if you go out and you look for hardship and hard times, like not hardships, but if your perception of hardship and hard times is nothing but brutal pain, demise, pain, hurt, then that's all you're going to find within those hard times. But for another person with a different mindset, if you go out and you look for that crucial hard pain and you find, if you go look for those hard times and in your mind is, oh, I'm going to get growth, I'm going to understand myself more, I'm going to do that, and all these positive things, who do you think is going to learn more from the experience? A lot of it's about mindset. And I see a lot of people, especially within our generation, they're just like, they have this cold, stern approach about the world, but in reality, that's what you're searching for. And that's the center of your own reality is that. and you had to have that mind shift in order to perceive the world better. Because if you have more positive talk and you see hard events as positive, if you even see the whole world as positive, you're gonna make the most out of life. And I think that's the ultimate purpose of every human behind their core purpose is making the most out of life. And that's what
Exactly. And
I
it depends on how you
believe.
see things, right?
Yeah,
Like to your point, it's all perception. Right? It's all about how you see
definitely.
things, right? So if you see
Yeah,
things in a positive way, then you can gain positive benefits even out of the negative situations.
exactly. Exactly. And it's just the cool thing about perspective is it can be changed if you're willing to let it. And I believe that everybody has control of their own mind. Like you can, if you think the sky's red, if you think the sky's purple, and you really believe that long enough, the sky might turn purple. The power of delusion is required for some sort of success because it's just society, the way society's set up. Like I always say this, it's not like the Joker, the society. But like my whole point being is the way the world's set up, they want you to view, oh, I can't afford this house, I can't do this, I'm limited because of this, that, and the third, and I can't do this and that. And there's a lot of people with self self-induced limits that hinder their ability to contribute to better willpower because of their minds not fixed for them to realize because most every human has things that they want to do that are hard. No matter who you are, there's probably an 80-year-old out there that wants to start a business. He's 80, bro. The likelihood of him starting a business is mathematically speaking pretty low unless he has money or like and if he's starting from ground zero. But if he has that mindset that I want to go get that, that your mindset contributes to your willpower. So if you have a weak mindset, your willpower is also going to be weak. So a lot of these things, especially with mindset, coincide, and your mindset is the way that you approach the world and the way you see it, essentially your own individual philosophy. So a tip that I could give for people to increase their willpower is to increase your perception of the world that increase your perception of the world that benefits you because it's different for each person. Like just if you want to increase your willpower, do the hard things and then also have a better perception of what those hard things provide for you.
So in your experience, w- what what are the instances that you have had to use the most willpower in your journey?
Wait, repeat that again.
So in your experience so far, in your journey so far, um, were there any specific moments in your life where you had to exercise the willpower, like exercise the most willpower, where your willpower was
Definitely.
basically
Definitely. When I was in sales and I had to take like eight sales calls a day. Like it doesn't sound like a lot, but reality that those calls are 45 minutes to an hour each. And they're back by back by back and back and back. And when you're sitting on a call and you're handling objections and you're trying to sell and you're trying to make the money work for in order for the deal to come through, it's a lot of mental gymnastics and it wasn't a test of my willpower, but most it was more of a test of how much work I can do. Because it's kind of like sensory overload to a point when you're talking to eight new people every single day, handling their objections, handling their concerns, guiding them from the point where they are now to make a decision. It's a lot of mental gymnastics, and that's where my willpower was stretched, but as well as quitting degenerate activities as well was when my willpower it wasn't stressed as much, but definitely like work. I always want to produce more. Like I don't think there's an excuse not to produce a lot. And sometimes you gotta really test your willpower and how much you can get done. You have to be realistic with yourself as well. Like I wanted to get, 40 shorts done this week and upload six a day. I wanted to do it. I attempted it. I uploaded six in one day and then a sixth another, and then I realized I wasn't getting the results I wanted because like the way that the algorithm works, I kind of messed it up, and now it's starting to refeed the algorithm. But if you're doing a lot of work, also look at the results that it's getting you. Because if you're doing a lot of output and you're not getting nothing in return, reconsider your strategies as well. But in terms of where I've been challenged the most, it's definitely been sales and work. It's definitely been that. Like I always have to push myself. There was days where I was doing like I was something called a setter. So essentially you call people up and you get them on the calendar for an appointment. Bro, there were some days where I did 400, 500 dials in one day. That's willpower, but also mental strength. So that's really where a lot of it stemmed from was business and work ethic. That's like the biggest place where my willpower was tested, and it was really tested. There was nights where from talking to people, I was so exhausted that when I hit the pillow, I was out, bro. I was done. And I had to wake up and do it day in, day out, day in, day out. And that helped me build consistency and increase my willpower.
So from sales, like from what you've learned in sales, what mental model did you develop to have the willpower you need or what you have right now?
So when I initially first started, I had the biggest problem with objections. Objections are basically like a reason why someone wouldn't pay for your services or why they shouldn't move forward. And when I first started sales, I believe that they were all legitimate. And then I altered my mindset and I really thought about it. People who need the most guidance are often blind to their own desires. So they're not going to initially understand why they need to invest. They're not going to initially understand the benefits in the long term. So in order to combat that, I had to learn that objections are their own self-limiting beliefs, and I had to guide them through that. That was one of the biggest ones. And then also another one. Well, I had two, like really two major one. That was the first one. The second was when I was calling people on the phone. I used to get a lot of hangups. Like, hey, this is Logan from XYZ company, whatever. Then I realized, bro, if someone called me with that bullshit, I would hang up too. So the next second lesson I learned is learn how to captivate attention and keep it. When you watch a YouTuber, even though the video might be bullshit, he knows how to captivate your attention and keep it. So you end up watching it. So the two biggest mindset shifts that I had to develop in order to become better at sales and get the results that I wanted was objections are their own self-limiting beliefs. And then if people never want to pick up the phone and talk to you, so you have to captivate attention and keep it.
See, yeah, and another follow-up question to that, like, how do you think solving the self-limiting beliefs will increase your willpower?
Because it also, when you spend a lot of time helping people overcoming their self-limiting beliefs, you can utilize that to overcome your own. So like most of the objections that you have before doing something hard, which is kind of like willpower, they're bullshit. You're just scared to actually start. You want the outcome. You desire the outcome. You want what the hard work provides, but you're scared to actually start. You're scared to put up and sacrifice what is needed for those long-term results. So for these people, it was money that they had to invest in order to become better. But for anybody listening, it's going to be time, sleep, um, missing out events. It's going to be in order for nothing that's worthwhile never include sacrifices. Like for example, like look at the men who built America or built countries. They had to go through war in order for the greatness, in order to pursue greatness for a country or greatness for this. That requires you to not even think about it. You have to go in because your passion, your belief is so strong for this one country, this one purpose, where it's a no-brainer. So if you're able to become confident within your 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 long-term visions, like these people like George Washington was a good example. Like George Washington, when he was a general in the army, he didn't think, oh, but should I really attack the British this way or this, that? Oh, I don't know if we were gonna win. Like the odds in that time was out of their hand. Like the British were gonna win on paper. But he said, no, I want America to be a country and I'm gonna fight towards that. You gotta have that ability. So like for example, if you're fighting this degenerate activity like smoking or drinking, you gotta be like, no, I don't do that anymore. You gotta have an identity shift, which is a perception shift. You got to be so confident. So you got to believe in, you got to have so much faith and you got to be so strong within your intentions to pursue greatness that you have to be willing to not even think about pursuing something that's worth hard and worthwhile.
And that's where it comes down to the mindset part. Like you said, like it's in order to have the identity shift, you need to develop that right mindset. Right? Like that's more
Yeah.
important. And the identity shift to everyone who's watching takes time. Like the
Years.
person who you were because of, let's say you're 19 years old right now, you have had 18 years of conditioning to get that mindset. So changing it overnight will not be an easy task. Like you're gonna have to work to change your identity. It took me it took me about 8 to 9 months of solid work for me to completely change my identity and become the person I am now. Uh,
Hmm.
and it wasn't easy throughout times. I always wanted to go back to the lifestyle, go back, but I kept resisting. To this day, I still have days where I'm like, oh, like that lifestyle is appealing, but no. Gotta stick to this path, gotta stick to this path. So the identity shift takes a long time.
And the thing
And you
about an
have to be
identity
willing
shift,
long term and short term.
yeah, and the thing about identity shift that I don't feel as though it's ever complete. Like when you turn 25, you're gonna look back at your 21-year-old self and be like, what the fuck was I doing? Who was I? And it's just a never-ending process of like development. Like if you think your identity's set in stone, especially at a young age, then you're delusional. Like it's not. You're always gonna have alternative opinions, and I don't think you I think you find yourself when you're older, like when you're probably like 50, 60, 70, 80. You start to you're everything's set in stone and it's just like there. But when you're younger, like don't be determined to think a certain way because it's always going to come back to you in the future. Like I might look back at this podcast when I'm 30 and be like, this guy's stupid. Or I might be like, yo, he was smart for his time. I don't know. We'll see there. But the whole point is do what you knows serves you the best right now so that your 30-year-old version would look back and be like, yo, that kid might have been a little fucking stupid, but let me tell you what, he did set me up for this life that I'm living now. It's like I always like to have visuals. Like, imagine if you didn't do the hard work. Imagine yourself at 30. You're probably like, fuck, I'm literally still where I am now, but I'm older. Is that acceptable in your mind? You have two questions, yes or no. And it's okay if that's acceptable. That's your life path. But you're gonna but I guarantee you're gonna end up having some type of resort, some type of regret later down in life. But that's all up to you at the end of the day. Willpower is something that nobody, nobody can do for you. Nobody's gonna come there and hold your hand and be like, you gotta do this, or I'm gonna slap you in the back of your head. And even if somebody does that, when they're not there, your true character shows. So you gotta be willing to consistently put in and out and be able to. You gotta ask yourself the reason why. You gotta be so competent and confident within those reasons to the point where you just do it and you don't think, you don't complain, you don't find excuses, you don't have self-limiting beliefs. You just go out and you just make it happen.
Body willpower is a muscle, right? So you have to exercise that muscle. If you don't exercise it, it's not gonna grow. Like if you're working out biceps, you can't expect to grow your triceps if you're not working out your
Yeah,
triceps. So
definitely.
you think of willpower as a muscle, keep exercising it every day, and it will grow over time.
Definitely. And I do wanna definitely like for the people at home for like a call to action because we're really heavy on that. Like you should like If you listen to us, we always want you to implement something. And for this episode's call to action, it's definitely a few things. Write down your current, this is going to be a lot of work. So once again, it's up to you if you're willing to do it or not. Write down your current mindset of the world, write down your morals, write down what you're struggling with willpower. For all those negative activities, I want you to draw an arrow with another box and it should say, do these serve me? Write yes or no. And then after you're done checking the box of yes or no, do another one, another arrow, and write why don't these serve me or why do these serve me? Critical thinking is how you get to the top 5 to 10%. You got to critical thinking is a skill that's unmastered because of the way that society has been set up, especially within school system, is based off of remembering and not critical thinking. So you have to instill critical thinking in order for you to become the best version of yourself. So make sure to write down your viewpoint of the world, things that you're struggling with willpower wise. Ask yourself, do these serve me? Yes or no? And write down why yes or no. That will give you insight to how your brain thinks, and you'll be able to view everything you just wrote on these pieces of paper from a third person perspective, which allows you to use logic instead of emotion to make viable changes that will serve you in the long run.